What do Victorian millionaires, Nazi ideology, and modern arguments about the welfare state all have in common? They've all, at some point, been linked to social Darwinism. But what is social Darwinism exactly? Where did it come from? How does it work? And why has it left such a mark on history? Let's break it down. And as always, if you enjoy content like this, please do consider subscribing to my channel. Let's start with the basics. Social Darwinism is not a scientific theory. It's an attempt to take Darwin's theory of evolution and use it to justify hierarchies in human societies. Darwin developed a theory of evolution that explained how species changed over time in nature. He observed levels of diversity within different species, with these diverse characteristics often being genetic. He also observed that because of scarce resources, not all members of a species survive long enough to reproduce. Individuals with traits better suited to the environment are more likely to survive and reproduce. Over time, favourable traits thus become more common in any given species, leading to a gradual change. Darwin's scientific theory thus formed directly as a result of his scientific observations. He importantly was not citing any trait as better than another, nor was he stating that evolution as a whole was a good thing. Darwin essentially saw evolution not as progress, but as a form of adaptation, and thus traits developed in one environment might not be useful in another. For example, the developing of fur in a cold climate would be problematic if a species was thrust into a hot one. In spite of its objective grounding, some people, especially in the late 19th century, took Darwin's theory and ran with it, injecting it into politics, economics, and race. One of the earliest promoters was Herbert Spencer, a British philosopher. He coined the phrase survival of the fittest, not Darwin. Spencer believed that society naturally improves when the strong succeed and the weak are left behind. He thought that helping the poor or disabled interfered with natural progress. This idea, survival of the fittest, brutal as it sounds, was extremely influential, especially amongst wealthy elites who wanted a scientific reason to explain why they were rich and others were poor. So how did this idea function in the real world? Think of it as a kind of lens. People who saw the world through the social Darwinist lens believed that inequality was natural and deserved. In Race and Empire, it was used to argue that some races were more advanced than others, and that the result of empires, the subjugation of certain races by others, and the pillaging of their natural resources, they were all part of a natural progress. In economics and politics, it meant that the rich were rich because they were fit to survive in capitalist society. You're poor? Well, maybe you just didn't work hard enough. This is why many proponents of social Darwinism, such as William Graham Sumner, were such opponents of the early welfare state. The welfare state exists to support everyone in society, including the weakest or those that are less well off, through programs such as education, healthcare, and disability payments, with the cost for these programs being borne by the whole of society and coming out of general taxation. The social Darwinist answer to this idea of an inclusive, universalist welfare state: don't help the weak, or you're holding back evolution. Here's the thing. Social Darwinism was incredibly useful if you were in power. If you're a 19th century factory owner, it told you your success isn't just luck or exploitation, it's biology. If you're an imperialist carving up Africa or Asia, it gave you a scientific excuse for domination. It let people justify inequalities in the world through the language of science. That's why it became so influential, especially in the late 1800s and early 1900s. But it had consequences, nasty consequences. Charles Darwin's half-cousin, Sir Francis Galton, took social Darwinism to a new level. Galton helped form the science of eugenics, which promoted the idea that we should improve the human race by controlling who gets to reproduce. This led to forced sterilizations and racist immigration laws, as well as a broad opposition to the welfare state, which was seen as allowing inferior humans to survive and reproduce. a certain Austrian man was impressed by the forced sterilizations happening in the USA. He went on to take social Darwinism and eugenics to its most horrific form. The Nazi ideology of racial purity led directly to the Holocaust, the state-sponsored murder of millions of mainly Jews and so-called undesirable people. Luckily, its associations with eugenics and the Holocaust led to social Darwinism losing much of its shine, and it fell out of fashion after the Second World War. However, echoes of social Darwinism continue to crop up in political debates, when people argue against helping the poor or disabled by claiming it creates dependence or weakens society. So, what can we learn from social Darwinism, if anything at all? In my view, it's a chilling example of how ideas like evolution can be twisted to justify cruelty. Understanding it helps us stay alert to when science is misused for power. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you'd like a follow-up on eugenics or anything else, drop a comment. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and please ring that bell so you don't miss out on future videos from my channel. Thank you for watching.